This on? There we go. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody back for the final day of our convention. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the following sponsors that support the convention: ACP Applied Products, Plains Midstream, Nelson Granite, TC Energy, Canada Oil and Gas Producers, Nuclear Waste Management Organization, Double SP, Agrimax, Ducks Unlimited Canada, Fort Distributors, Insurance Bureau of Canada, Lutheran Care Village, Perlinger Group Benefits, Saskatchewan Heavy Construction Association, and Welco Belize Manufacturing. I'd now like to ask SARM's Executive Director to come forward and present the 2020 financial report. Jay.
Thank you, Darwin. Good morning. I don't know if it's more intimidating standing in front of 1,500 delegates or an eighth of them, or even a 16th of them. But bear with me. I'm going to go through some slides, and then we're going to provide an opportunity to ask questions. And then after that, we'll ask Darwin to ask for a motion to accept the financial report. But joining us this morning from Virtus Group, we have Sheila Filion, who is the partner of SARM's Audit, and Tania Wild, Principal and Manager of SARM's Audit. We also have joining us today Catherine Patterson. Catherine's the Director of Finance in our office, as well as Craig Williams, our Director of Insurance and Benefits. This report will highlight significant details or trends with respect to SARM's financial results in 2019. The audited financial statements are available on the SARM website under Resources and Annual Reports. The link to access the reports were sent to all the RMs by email. The audit has been completed, and a clean audit opinion was issued by the SARM auditors, Virtus Group. Okay. SARM's financial statements have three components: the general fund accounts for SARM's day-to-day operations. The fund includes all contributions and resources which are not restricted for use by the insurance and benefit funds or by any of the programs administered by SARM for the provincial ministries. The Insurance and Benefits Fund report all revenues and expenses related to the operation of the SARM's benefits plan, the liability self-insurance plan, the fidelity bond plan, and the property self-insurance program. Other funds are used to account for the externally restricted contributions and related expenses for programs and initiatives administered by SARM. A wide range of programs are funded through the external contributions by provincial ministries. This graph shows the general fund surplus each year since 2015. SARM has had a stable history of strong surpluses. This year, SARM has a surplus of $741,773 compared to last year's surplus of $483,347 and a surplus of $315,591 in 2017. Trying this clicker. There we go. Well, there we go. This fund balance represents the sum of SARM's general fund annual surpluses and deficits since beginning of operations. This slide shows the growth in SARM's general fund balance since 2015. In December 31st, 2009, the SARM general fund balance was $7,647,646. Okay, membership fees account, this is the general revenue. Membership fees account for 19.4% of SARM's general revenue. Other than membership fees, the largest sources of revenue are administration fees and the net revenue from member services, or the net revenue of member services. Investment income was significant in 2019 due to the unrealized market value appreciation. This income varies significantly depending on the performance of the investment markets. Administration fees are transferred from the insurance and benefits plans as well as from other programs administered by SARM for external parties such as MREP and the AG programs. Net revenues from SARM's member services were $526,696 in 2019. Through SARM's member services, we strive to provide our member municipalities with quality service and products at fair prices. Trading Services provides a wide variety of products, which have been tendered on our members' behalf at discounted prices through relationships with various partners. SARM coordinates insurance and benefit programs through external carriers, including excess liability insurance, extended health and dental benefits, and long-term disability program, and an optional life insurance program. SARM's legal services represents RMs with respect to claims under the SARM liability self-insurance plan and provides advice to RMs. The fees charged to the insurance plan and to members are well below market rates, with the goal of breaking even or covering the cost to SARM of providing legal services. In 2019, legal services had a deficit of $18,957. Staff expenses were higher in 2019 as we added an additional full-time staff member to assist with the capacity within the department. So now we have 3 lawyers and 1 legal assistant in our legal department. SARM's community planning services are available to all RMs. There are a variety of services offered, and these can be tailored to meet the needs of each individual municipality. The cost of community planning services exceeds the revenue generated through fees for service. The net expense of community planning, including an allocation of SARM's general expenses, is funded by the contributions from the Strategic Initiatives funding. About 44.3% of SARM's general expenses are for staff salaries and benefits. Salaries and staff expenses for the legal and planning staff, as well as for the program staff for the Municipal Roads for the Economy program, are not included in general expenses, but are included as part of the membership or member services or program expenses. Board and other meetings and advocacy engagement expenses represent 18.7% of total general expenses. This category includes per diems and honorariums, but also travel expense reimbursements and meeting and travel expenses paid directly by SARM for board meetings, external committee meetings, external committee meetings by the board members, lobbyist fees, and staff travel expenses for advocacy trips. I think we need new batteries. This slide shows a summary of the operating results for SARM's insurance and benefit funds. The following slides will provide additional information on the SARM benefits plan as well as the self-insurance plans. Benefit plan claims. This slide shows the claims paid by the SARM's benefit plan over the last 5 years. The majority of claims are for short-term disability or vision claims. This slide shows the claims paid by the SARM's benefit plan as a percentage of premiums paid in each of the last 5 years. The trend for claim costs in the SARM benefits plan generally edges higher over time, notwithstanding fluctuations up and down from year to year. Rising claim costs are driven by higher salaries for individuals, but also in part due to our aging workforce. In 2019, claims were higher than in either of the previous 2 years, but still within the range we have been experiencing over the past 8 years. The operational surplus in 2019 for the benefits plan was $496,096. The surplus included investment income of $388,891, which was very high in 2019 due to the unrealized appreciation in market values. The fund balance is $4,448,454 as of December 31st, 2019 for the SARM benefits plan, and it's very stable and healthy. This slide shows the claims expense incurred by the liability self-insurance plan over the past 5 years. The claims experience for the plan have been generally stable as well, but can fluctuate depending on the nature of claims that we settle in any particular year. The annual operating deficits for the liability self-insurance plan, shown by the brown bars, exclude the investment income which is allocated separately to the individual accounts. The investment income for each year is shown by the gray bars. Operating results include claims that have been paid along with accrued claims based on estimates of potential claim payments. While each of the last 5 years have had operating deficits, 3 of the past 5 years have seen overall surpluses. This slide shows an operating deficit for the 4 of the last 5 years. The liability self-insurance plan fund balance of $14.229 million as of December 31st, 2019 is strong. In order to address the trend of operating deficits, as shown in the previous graph, premiums for the plan have increased at a gradual rate. Previously, premiums for the plan had remained unchanged from its inception in 1987. With the exception of a small increase in 2003. These increases reflected the increasing cost to defend claims through the legal system. While operating deficits have been significantly reduced, we anticipate that further small increases may be required for the coming years in order to keep the plan revenues balanced with expenses. The fund balance is the collective total of the individual accounts held on behalf of the members who participate in the liability self-insurance plan. This slide shows the claims paid by the property self-insurance program as a percentage of premiums paid in each of the past 5 years. Property insurance claims tend to vary widely based on instances that happen in that year. It is a relatively small program, so a couple of large claims can make a substantial difference. Bear with me here, guys. Okay, there we go. The annual operating surpluses or deficits shown for the property self-insurance program, shown by the brown bars, exclude the investment income which is allocated separately to the individual accounts, shown by the gray bars. Operating results include claims that have been paid along with accrued claims based on estimates that are potential claim payments. 3 of the last 5 years have been operating deficits. However, there has consistently been overall surpluses. The property self-insurance program's fund balance is strong as shown on this graph. The fund balance is the collective total of the individual accounts held on behalf of the members who participate in the property self-insurance plan. This slide shows the claims paid by the Fidelity Bond self-insurance plan as a percentage of premiums paid in each of the last 5 years. There is potential for wide variations in claims paid amounts for this plan, depending on the nature of the claims incurred. As this is a small plan, one large claim can also make a substantial difference. The Fidelity Bond self-insurance plan's fund balance is healthy and growing, as shown in the graph. Despite the strength of the fund balance, one large Fidelity Bond loss of $200,000 could set the plan back significantly. To offset the risk of more and more RMs carrying higher Fidelity Bond limits, premiums for the coverage under the plan has increased in 2 stages over 2016 and 2017. These were the first increases in the plan since its inception in 1994. The additional revenue to the plan will help grow the fund balance faster so as to better protect RMs against a potential large loss in the future. So we do have other programs. Pursuant to the various funding agreements with provincial ministries, SARM delivers a range of programs, as listed in this slide, that provide assistance to our members in which provide benefit to rural Saskatchewan. Total funding for the programs administered by SARM is approximately $17.9 million. This includes all payments made to RMs, suppliers for the programs, and the administration fees for SARM to deliver the programs. The SARM cost charged to the provincially funded programs are specified in the various agreements. Costs are either charged directly to the program or a recovery of allocated SARM costs such as salaries or staff salaries and benefits, office expenses, as well as office overhead. The recovery of allocated costs are recorded as administration fees in the SARM statements. This concludes the financial report, and at this time I'd like to ask members if they have any questions. So anyone who may have a question about my 21 or so slides, please feel free to ask, and we'll be happy to help you. We have Craig, Catherine, and our Virtus Group ladies here. So, okay. Well, no questions. I'll ask Darwin to come up. Do one more order of business.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay, for your report. Excuse me. May I get somebody to move Jay's 2020 financial report? 102? Thank you.
102, okay. So just call the question if you don't mind.
All in favor?
Okay. Thank
Vote.
you. Oh, sorry.
Nope.
I'm not sharing this part, by the way. This is Darwin's role.
I don't know if we need a pose, but
No, we better do it.
good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we do have some time, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the point of privilege, so we'll have some time for some networking and some coffee. But we have heard that there has possibly been some individuals that have returned their clickers, not thinking there may be point of privileges where we may use them, or actually in the Division 3 meeting where there is an election. So if you are a voting delegate and you have returned your clickers, please go talk to the registration desk, and we do have tracks of who the voting delegates are, and we will return your clickers, but only if you're the voting delegate. If you're not the voting delegate, we're not going to be able to get you a clicker of maybe a possible voting delegate that returned those. But if there are any voting delegates that have returned their clickers, please talk to the front desk. So if that's the case, we'll adjourn until 9 o'clock. So thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in about 2-3 minutes, we're going to get rolling on the point of privilege resolutions. We have received 3 point of privilege resolutions, so fill up your coffee, do what you need to do. In a couple minutes here, we're going to get rolling. Good morning. Let's get rolling. So we're at the stage of the convention where we're going to be debating won't be debating point of privilege resolutions, but we'll be voting on which point of privilege resolutions will be passed by 2/3 that we will debate after. So we'll be putting up the 3 point of privilege resolutions. I will only be reading the operative clause, so that's to be it resolved. And at that point, like I said, there'll be no debate. We will just vote to see if we want to hear these resolutions as regular resolutions. And that being said, as soon as we figure out which ones we want to hear as regular resolutions, we will do so. Vice President Carmen Sterling will get up and we'll treat those ones just like regular resolutions. We'll have debates, amendments, whatever else we may see. But I'm going to get rolling on point of privilege 1-20A. Damage to rural infrastructure due to resource extraction. The RM of Mariposa, number 350. Be it resolved that SARM lobby and petition the provincial government to update and amend the municipality's regulations, subsections 12.1 and 13.1, to more closely reflect the current costs of building, maintaining, and repairing damage to rural infrastructure from resource extraction. Be it further resolved that a formula be developed to adjust rates annually. So as stated, there'll be no debate. So I'm going to ask you to click, is it A for, so it comes up on the screen here. A for in favor and B for opposed. So you can vote now. So that has passed 86%, so we will be hearing that as a regular resolution after the point of privilege process. So now we got point of privilege 2-20A. Proactive planning around amalgamation discussions. RM of Fertile Belt, number 183. Okay. Be it resolved that SARM acquire the services of the appropriate person or firm in order to be proactive and prepared should the issue of forced amalgamation rise again. So please hit A for in favor, B for opposed, You can vote now. $62% in favor, so that was not passed. Has to be 2/3. Okay, so I'm going to go into our final point of privilege resolution, POP 3-20A. Councillor email addresses from the RM of Weyburn, number 67. Be it resolved that for the purposes of more effective communication, as well as accurate information between administrators, councillors, and ratepayers, that SARM lobby the provincial government to mandate each municipality to have individual email addresses for each of their councillors available to the public commencing after the 2020 provincial election. So I'm going to call the question. It's A, in favor, B, opposed, and you can vote now. What do you think, Mike? That was opposed by 80%. So I'd like to call up Vice President Carmen Sterling. We have one point of privilege, which is now a regular resolution to debate. You will hear the entire resolution in its entirety. We'll have one of our good-looking directors on to my right read them all.
Go ahead.
Damage to rural infrastructure due to resource extraction, point of privilege 1-20A, RM of Mariposa, number 350. Whereas the municipality's regulations, subsection 12.1, regarding the maintenance and restoration of roads by hauler, and subsection 13.1, regarding payment for shortening of lifetime of municipal roads, have not been amended since 2013. Municipalities are not fairly compensated for repairing and maintaining rural infrastructure through road maintenance agreements. Whereas municipalities are solely responsible for repairing and maintaining rural infrastructure, and current rates for road maintenance agreements are set by provincial legislation in the municipalities' regulations. Whereas the ongoing damage to rural infrastructure is not covered sufficiently by road maintenance agreements, be it resolved that SARM lobby and petition the provincial government to update and amend the municipalities' regulations, subsections 12.1 and 13.1, to more closely reflect the current costs of building, maintaining, and repairing damage to rural infrastructure from resource extraction. Be it further resolved that a formula be developed to adjust rates annually.
So do we have a mover? Mike 3?
Welter 350.
Would you like to speak to it?
This is something that's come up in the last year when we had a large gravel haul. We found that the rates dictated to us by the provincial government in the RMA were not even close to the reality of repair and reconstruction to some of our infrastructure. And so we're just asking that SARM lobby the provincial government to adjust those rates and create a formula so that they're adjusted annually on a cost-inflated basis.
Anyone else, anyone else wish to speak to the resolution? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. So A, in favor, B, opposed. You can vote now. That is carried 90%. So that concludes our point of privilege resolution sessions. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'll turn it over to Norm.
So we are saving some time, so we do have the Leader of the Opposition speaking at 9:30, so once again, we'll just have to have a little networking break here and fill up our coffees if need be, and at 9:30, we'll get rolling with the Leader of the Opposition. Thank you very much.
I guess we'll get going in about 5 minutes if you want to come back and sit down. Well, I guess we're about ready to get going here. If we could have quiet, please. It is now my distinct pleasure to be able to announce Dr. Ryan Miley, the leader of the opposition for the NDP. Dr. Miley became an MLA in the constituency of Saskatoon Metawasin in by-election held on March the 2nd of 2017. Ryan is a family doctor and community builder who lives and works in Saskatoon's core neighborhoods, and he's one of the good guys. He comes from Division 2 at Corval. Please welcome Dr. Ryan Miley.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. It is a real pleasure. Thank you, Norm. Thanks to all the exec, all the Reeves and counselors, Mr. Barnhart. Great to see everyone here today. We've got the Mayor of Prince Albert's here with us. I'm joined with Trent Weatherspoon as well, MLA for Regina Rosemont. And I understand it's been quite some time since the Leader of the Opposition has had a chance to address this assembly, so I'm very grateful for the chance to share a few words with you today. But I admit it's a bit of a strange day to do so. There's a lot going on in the world, and there's some things we're going to need to talk about. Normally, I'd spend some time giving you my rural bona fides that I grew up on a farm near Kerval, RM of Rogers, number 133. Anybody RM of Rogers? Don't see you out there. If you're out there, find me afterwards, neighbor. Would like to say hello. Talk about how I went and trained as a family doctor, worked all over rural Saskatchewan, northern Saskatchewan, and inner city Saskatoon. I normally would talk about the frustrations of practicing medicine and seeing that while I loved that work, so much of what we were able to do there was influenced by things out of the clinic. That the choices made at the legislature have much more impact on the big factors that make a big difference in people's health. And that's why I made the shift from medicine into politics, to try to help improve people's lives through education, through good jobs, through housing, through food security. And about our plans as New Democrats. Hello, Ray. Good to see you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me here today. You're a little late, but it's okay. Thanks. Yeah, so this is what I'd normally talk about. Our plans to improve the economy, improve healthcare, improve education, improve life in rural Saskatchewan. But today, in Saskatchewan and around the world, we're dealing with something totally new. And I think we have to have a very serious talk about what's happening with COVID-19 virus. It has now been declared a pandemic around the world. That means, a pandemic means it won't be contained to one part of the world. It will be everywhere. Experts are predicting 30 to 70% of the Canadian population will be affected. When and how, that's up to us. Events are being canceled around the world. The music festivals, we've learned today that the Junos in Saskatoon have been canceled, which, yeah, that's true. And I was disappointed to hear that. I had tickets. I was excited to go. It was going to be a good show. But it's not just a big event in Saskatoon, in our largest city. The Junos was a big event bringing people from all over the country and even outside of Canada, from places that have been infected. So I do think that's a wise choice to have been made. The NBA season's been suspended. The NHL's figuring out what they're going to do with their games. The president of the U.S., after downplaying the risk, has now canceled travel between the U.S. and much of Europe. Tim Hortons has canceled Roll Up the Rim. You know, this is serious stuff. Right? It's a big deal, and in response to this very real health emergency, the global economic consequences, which we've already seen, they're massive. You know, we've seen the drop in oil prices. We've seen the stock market crashes, bounces, crashes. The uncertainty that's happening in economic markets, it's going to have major repercussions here in Saskatchewan. So it's not a time to panic. It's not a time to buy a lifetime supply of toilet paper. But it is absolutely time. It is absolutely time for us to take serious, measured, responsible action. It is a time for leadership. How we respond now, all of us together, how we respond now can make all the difference between a bad situation and a worse one. And that's why I'm really grateful again to talk to you today, the elected, respected leaders of the communities in every part of our province. The people that you represent depend on you, and you have a huge role to play in determining how well Saskatchewan weathers this storm. It's not a moment for the back and forth of partisan politics. It's a moment to look around the room here, to look around the room in the legislature, look around all the rooms in this province, and recognize the strengths that we all bring to this fight, and turn our attention to the biggest problems in front of us. Because we can't make this go away, but we can get ahead of it. We can get this right, and we can minimize the health and economic impacts in Saskatchewan. But we can only do that if we get to work now. There are over 124,000 cases of COVID-19 infection worldwide, 46 in BC, 19 in Alberta, up from 4 just a couple days ago, over 100 in Canada. That might not sound like much when you look at the world numbers, but this happens fast. Italy went from 300 cases to 10,000 in only 2 weeks. Once it reaches a certain level, the number of cases doubles every 6 days. So that's the situation. What can we do about it? We can't stop it. It's a pandemic, but we can slow it down. And that will make all the difference. And I think about the public health challenges that folks in rural Saskatchewan are well aware of and how important it is to get ahead of things. Club root, BSE, all of the things that we know if we stop them early, they reduce the health impact on crops, on livestock, on people, and reduce the economic impact as well. When it comes to COVID-19, the most important goal we can have is to do what epidemiologists call flatten the curve. So here's the idea. There are 2 possible distribution curves for an infection as it rolls through the population. One that spikes like this, or one that is long and flat like this. And if you get all the cases early, if you get all the cases at once and you get that high spike, you get higher mortality, more healthcare workers get sick, healthcare services are overwhelmed. That's a disaster. That's Wuhan, that's Italy. But when the cases are spread out over time, that flatter curve, more healthcare resources are available, they don't get overwhelmed. Potentially you get fewer cases overall, you definitely get lower mortality rates, fewer people die, and maybe we're even lucky enough to delay for a lot of people into the window when treatments are available or vaccines are available. As folks around the world, scientists around the world, including at Vito in Saskatoon, are hard at work trying to find cures and vaccines. That's the goal, flatten the curve. So how do we do that? How do we flatten the curve? The main principle, really the only thing that works, is what's called social distancing. Now, Saskatchewan has some advantages when it comes to social distancing. Right? Our next neighbors on our family farm are 2 miles away. And even in our big cities, we're not the density of the Tokyos and Mexico cities of the world. And most of us are also fortunate. We live in clean, safe housing. We have access to what we need to protect ourselves. This is protective, and Saskatchewan has some advantages, but only if we're careful. The more we practice social distancing, the more we flatten that curve. The virus spreads through coughing and sneezing with a distance of about 6 feet or 2 meters. So that's one thing to be aware of. And then through direct physical contact. So I was very rude to the members of the executive today when I joined, and I said, I'm not shaking hands today. And I'm sorry about that. It feels awful. I'm a politician. I shake hands. And I love to shake hands. We all want to show each other that respect, that attention, with a friendly, hearty handshake. It is our culture. It's how we greet each other. But I seriously think we have to stop for a while. And that's why the most important thing we can do is avoid the situations where you'll unnecessarily come into contact with others who are potentially infected. Be safe. You're at a big gathering today. Hopefully we've got no one here who's got the virus, that we're not at extra risk today. But looking forward, think about other big gatherings. Stop shaking hands. Wash your hands lots. If you have even a sniffle or a little bit of a sore throat, head home and give it some time. Be thoughtful about who you visit as well. If you're visiting older folks, be really careful about who you might expose. And if anyone comes out and tells you, we don't need to do this yet, don't start, it's not here yet, tell them to listen to the health experts. Now is exactly the time for us to start practicing social distancing in a real and serious way. It is not a matter of time until the virus is here. The virus is in Saskatchewan. It's a matter of time until a case is detected. That's what a pandemic is. It's a matter of time until someone dies in Saskatchewan. That will happen here. It's a worldwide phenomenon. We can't stop that, but we can decrease the transmission. We can decrease the number of people who will be very sick. So it's great that today, it's the last day of SARM, everybody's going to spread out, disperse. By all accounts, it's been a terrific and really successful convention, so congratulations. Now, as leaders, as communities, as individuals taking care of our own health and the health of our families, let's start that social distancing. That's why, I'm very pleased to share with you a little bit of news. I think one of the worst possible things we could do at this time, at this crucial moment, is to have an election, to send people door to door, shaking hands, holding rallies, inviting seniors to gather in one spot to vote. If you are looking for a way to make the virus spread as quickly as possible, that's exactly what you would do. It's the opposite of social distancing and would be very dangerous. And we've been making that point for a few days, and I'm very pleased to announce. And I'd like us to give a round of applause to Scott Moe. He's made the right choice. No spring election. Yeah. So I thank the Premier. That is a wise decision. It will give us the time to prepare properly and respond properly to what's going on. So that's, those are the things we shouldn't do. We shouldn't have an election. We shouldn't have large gatherings. We should stop shaking hands for a bit. What do we need to do? What should we do? It is time now for us to go full force. Go full force on COVID preparation and go full force on economic recovery. It's a time to put aside partisanship, all the more reason that having no election just makes it so much easier to do this work properly, to mobilize all the appropriate resources and develop, implement, and communicate a plan for the health of Saskatchewan people. Because there are important questions that we still don't have answers for. My wife is a pediatrician in Saskatoon. Her clinic has had no direction to date from the Saskatchewan Health Authority on how to manage COVID-19 in her clinic. And this is the case for every clinic in the province. There was an outline of a plan released today. We're happy to see that. That's a start, but from today forward, we need some clear answers. How do frontline staff protect themselves? When should they not come to work? How are we going to be identifying patients who are potentially infected? How will they be isolated in waiting rooms, in emergency, in clinics? What kinds of stations will be set up for testing in the community so we have people being tested but not winding up burdening the frontline healthcare or exposing existing patients? What measures will be taken in long-term care and other residential facilities? We need a clear plan with answers to these and other key questions to flatten that curve and reduce the health burden, the health impacts of COVID-19. We also need to get to work now to address the economic reality that we face. World markets have plunged. The WTI oil price is at $30 a barrel. It's almost down to half the price of a couple of weeks ago. The Saskatchewan economy was already struggling. People were hurting, living paycheck to paycheck, and now people's savings and pensions are going up in smoke as the market dissolves before our eyes. Life for regular folks in this province is only getting harder, and we need leadership at this time. The government has prepared a budget, and they put it to bed in February, 2 weeks ago, and that's really not relevant anymore. The numbers, the projections, what they were working on, the information they were working on, that's now out the window. What the document will have next week isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Pretending otherwise just means we're not being ready. We're not thinking ahead. So now, here's what we need to do. And this is my message to you. It's my message to the whole province. We need to postpone the budget. We need to take a step back, reevaluate, and come up with a new plan that reflects today's reality. And we need to use this moment of unified purpose in addressing the economic and health impacts of coronavirus to call a special committee together to bring representatives of the opposition and the government together with the help of experts, of the folks at SARM, the urban municipalities, the universities of Saskatchewan and Regina, the Polytechnic, the federal government, Sask Federation of Labour, the FSIN, the Saskatchewan Chambers from the major cities, the School Board Association, Health Authority, all of the experts coming together, working together, reorient the budget to what it will now have to be, which is an economic stimulus package that focuses on people. We need daily reports to the public on the status of what's happening with COVID-19 and on the status of what's happening with our economic plans. This isn't going to bounce back overnight. This isn't going to be easy. This is going to be hard work. But there are things we can do to speed our recovery, to get ahead of this. And some of these are things we've already talked about. Building more Saskatchewan projects, building a hospital in Prince Albert, Mayor Dion, absolutely. But making sure we do so with Saskatchewan companies and Saskatchewan workers to keep that money right here in our economy. We need to make wise investments in education and in health to build resilience in a battered economy, seeking out new markets and making sure we're able to get Saskatchewan products to market by rail and by pipeline. And we need to bring in, all right. Absolutely, we need to get our products to market, and we need to bring in support for farmers who still have last year's crop in the field and those who are unsure of how they're going to be able to afford to get seed in the ground this spring. And that includes increasing the reference margin for agri-stability from 70 back up to 85%. It means investing heavily in renewable energy to reduce people's bills and create jobs across the province. And it means ensuring that workers who have to take time off when they're sick, they don't lose their job, and that there are supports for small businesses who are going to see way less people coming in through the door. This is a serious moment. It is a serious challenge, but there is a lot that we can do if we take advantage of where we are in this curve to boost the Saskatchewan economy, to make sure we get through these tough times and we create the conditions to handle future tough times even better and take full advantage when the good times are back. But there's no time to waste. Let's get to work. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to head back to the legislature. Trent and I are going to head back over, and we're going to propose in the Assembly exactly what I've just proposed to you, this plan to work together to tackle COVID-19, both the health impacts and the economic impacts, to get both parties working together on a plan. It's time for Saskatchewan to show leadership, to flatten the curve, save lives, and save our economy. This will require leadership from both parties, all of us at the table. It will also require leadership from you. So I appreciate, once again, thank you, Ray, thank you, the exec, thanks to everyone here, the opportunity to meet with you, always, but especially in this difficult moment. I'm here to work alongside you to improve the lives of people in rural Saskatchewan. I know that's what you're here to do as well. And so until I can, once again, do what I would most like to do, which is walk around the room and shake everybody's hand, please accept my deepest respect for your leadership in your communities, my gratitude for this opportunity to address you today, and my firm commitment to work alongside you in the weeks and months ahead to put the people of Saskatchewan first, to make sure we all emerge stronger from this moment. Thank you so much. Have a very great day.
Well, thank you, Dr. Miley. Now we are pleased to have with us today the Commanding Officer, Assistant Commissioner Mark Fisher, with the RCMP this morning. As a dedicated 25-year veteran, Assistant Commissioner Fisher has served with various RCMP detachment command functions. In 2007, he was seconded to the Criminal Justice Reform Secretariat for the province of British Columbia as the RCMP Liaison Officer to the provincial government. In 2011, he was appointed Chief of the Oak Bay Police Department. In 2014, Assistant Commissioner Fisher assumed the role of Officer in charge of the Nanaimo Detachment, the largest RCMP detachment on Vancouver Island. In 2016, Assistant Commissioner Fisher transferred to D Division as the Criminal Operations Officer, Core Policing, where he had oversight of provincial detachment policing, support services, community and Aboriginal policing, the Major Crime Unit, and traffic services of the provincial reviewers. Assistant Commissioner Fisher took official command as the F Division's commanding officer on December 5, 2018.
and is the 34th Commanding Officer of the Saskatchewan RCMP. Please welcome Assistant Commissioner Mark Fisher.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be here today. Before I get too far into it, I'll answer a question that I seem to answer a lot these days, and that's about my little decoration beneath my eye here. I would like to say it's from wrestling and fighting in the streets, but I'm a few years removed from that. More a hazard of playing ball hockey in Saskatchewan. And 10 o'clock on a Thursday night when going into a corner for a ball that maybe I shouldn't have gone in for, and stick meets eye, and my wife gets up the next morning, because I get home about midnight from ball hockey and pizza and all the good stuff that flows from that, and she sees a bag of peas in the sink. She comes in and she says to me, "What's up with the bag of peas?" This is before she saw the eye. And she said, "What the hell happened last night?" So it's getting better a week later, but always makes for a good story. I was supposed to do a video message early next week to our members on some of our policing priorities for the upcoming year, and going to have to reconsider that here for a little time till this heals. So I thought this morning I would run through briefly some of a slide deck here. I won't cover all of the slides just in the interest of time, but I'll talk a bit about sort of what we're seeing happening in the province around some of the crime stats. I'll talk a little bit about some emerging issues, and I'll also talk about the SWIFT Hub discussions, because I know that's been a topic of conversation here this week. So if we look at I'll concentrate on the south and central areas of the province for the most part. Over the past 4 years, we've seen significant drops in property crime, particularly in 2018 to 2019. And I think one of the big impacts on that, when we look particularly at property crime and around break-and-enters, is some of the work that our crime reduction teams have done across the province, focusing on some of our more prolific offenders and having an impact on those repeat offenses that they do. And that's something that becomes a very personal crime to folks, and that our home is our castle. And the sense of violation that one feels when you're victim of a break-and-enter or a property theft from your, be it from your farm or your home in a residential area, is not something that simply passes in a day, and it's something that we take quite seriously, and the impact that has on people's sense of safety. So happy to see the improvements that are happening on that front. Persons crime continues to be a challenge. The interesting part of this is what we're seeing in some of the stats is an increase in sexual offenses. Some of that is internet related and exploitation, and some of the contact that happens over the internet with people, I guess, being groomed, for lack of a better term. And that's not just about youth, it happens with some of our vulnerable elderly as well into some of these offenses. So we see an increase in that area, some of it internet related, some of it I think is more awareness in community and more reporting in seeing the supports and some of the things that are happening through the courts and improvements on that front. But an area that requires work. The other piece on that front, persons crimes, that includes some of the more serious assaults that we see. And with the increase in meth in many of our communities, we're seeing an increase in assaults and assaultive behavior. Varies community to community, region to region, but some of the areas of the province have been very hard hit by meth, and that explains some of that increase, at least over the past year or two. This is just a different graphic sort of covering off only 2018 to 2019. So again, a significant decrease in property crime and a slight increase in persons crime in those areas. We've spoken to you in the past, particularly I think in the regional meetings that I've attended, and Superintendent Konetsky attended some as well, around the initiative of the Crime Watch Advisory Network. So we have over 10,000 subscribers now across the province. And this is showing really good results on a variety of fronts for us. We've been able to solve several crimes with people giving us relevant information in a very timely manner. when our detachments are able to get out that information on a crime that they feel you or other citizens can help us with, and get that feedback in a much quicker loop than waiting for a media release or something of that nature. Particularly around property crimes, break-in enters in progress, stolen vehicles are some of the ones, or stolen large pieces of equipment. That's been one of the surprises around that, is we've recovered some very expensive pieces of either oil field equipment or farm equipment that have been stolen in a relatively short time turnaround, as well as descriptions of vehicles leaving break-in enters or suspicious vehicles from farms or large properties. So that has been very good. The other piece of that I really like is it gives us a chance to do a much more timely, I think, and a better job of informing the public about what's happening in their community and getting that information out in a far more timely manner than waiting for a community meeting or waiting for the local news or something of that nature to come out. Is that our detachment commanders have been given the authority to get on this network and send out information immediately. There were a few bumps in the road along the way, which we expected as they learn the process and kind of figure out what qualifies for this network and what doesn't. But that's been well worth those little bumps in the road as it's occurred. The other piece is some of the municipal departments, the municipal police agencies, are now coming online as well with this program. So they're seeing the potential in it and some of the benefits that we've seen across the province and the support that the provincial government has given us to roll out this program. It's very easy to sign up. You can get an email, a text, or a phone call, depending on what you subscribe for, to join the network. And again, that comes immediately to your phone once that message is issued out by the local detachment or detachment commander. One of the other key pieces for us is around reconciliation. I guess the way I describe this is reconciliation is not easy. If you're really going to join in and take on the task that comes with, there will be bumps on the road as we work through it. But it's an effort that we need to make. And it's an effort that we have several of our detachments and our senior leadership involved in, where we see opportunities to engage and make a difference in several of our Indigenous communities, and also to start having some of those difficult discussions about our history and the impacts it's had, as well as finding new initiatives that we can move forward with. What I would say on that front is I think things have improved over the past year. We still have our challenges, obviously, but there is a lot of communication and a lot of doors opening for us to get involved in some of those initiatives on the ground floor. So we'll continue to work at that, as well as increasing our component of Indigenous employees in the force and trying to attract cadets and recruits and applicants from our Indigenous communities, because that has been a challenge for years. Domestic violence is another policing priority in the province. We have one of the highest rates of domestic violence in Canada, if you look at the Stats Canada stats. This obviously affects not only the victims of domestic violence, but the children that are involved and the family members that are witness to these events. It's something we know we need to get better at dealing with and providing supports in communities. We do have a domestic violence coordinator for the province, works within our office. She reviews all of the domestic violence investigations across the province to ensure that we haven't missed something. And I think we all know what happens when we miss something, or what could happen. And that's when we end up in a situation with a serious injury or a homicide at the worst case scenario. And we go back and do a review and see what our involvement was, and if we missed something or there's something we or the courts could have done better. So it's a continuous learning process. She engages with our detachments or our investigators if she does see a gap at a very early stage, so we get that chance to go in there and deal with it and fix it before the situation gets worse. The other piece on that front is trying to provide more support from a policing perspective to some of our community agencies around victim services, shelters, services that are provided to women and children that are victim in these instances is very important. Anything we can do to help either on training or building capacity and showing support and increasing communication with those agencies in our communities is something we want to improve upon. I mentioned the crime reduction teams. Again, an excellent investment of money and resources. The one issue we're seeing, not unique to the RCMP jurisdictions, but definitely an issue for us, particularly in the Battleford, Onion Lake area of the province. That corner of the province or section of the province in the central area is the increase in gang violence, and it's hitting us hard. A lot of it is meth related and related to the trade of drugs and meth and the conflicts that happen within those groups. And that at times it's a bit like a game of whack-a-mole. And you'll pick off one of the key targets and then somebody steps in to fill that void, but they don't simply step in. There's a conflict there in trying to gain territory and influence within that group, which leads to significant violent encounters. We had a series of drive-by shootings in Battleford earlier this year at residences, which we flooded the community and I guess put some of those that were seeking the most attention where they belonged, and our shootings went down. But it shows you the level of risk that these people are willing to take to gain that piece of ground or territory in their conflicts in the drug trade in the province. So that is creating significant pressures from a policing perspective. And we've seen it in an increase in homicides early this year. I think as of about 2 weeks ago, we had 6 already. Majority of them gang related or a gang component or drug component to them. So that draws a significant chunk of resources from a policing perspective in investigating those cases, from the courts as well, and putting them through. And these aren't simple cases where you've got one offender. You've got sometimes multiple offenders involved, multiple witnesses, and they're very complex investigations. We have a very good solve rate on them, but again, that's a huge draw on resources when we look at it from a policing perspective, and it's not, as I said, unique to the RCMP jurisdictions. It's a challenge that our partners in Saskatoon, Prince Albert, and Regina are also facing. This is probably one of the best news stories we have from a policing perspective in the province over the past couple of years, and that's the work of our combined traffic services, our roving traffic units across the province, in that you talk about measurements, and I hear a lot now about measurements in policing and how are we measuring that we're getting value from our policing service, and at times that can be a very difficult piece to put a real measurement to that we can control. This is one area where we are seeing that. When you look at, okay, we're increasing tickets, but what's happening as a result of that? Are we seeing decreases in deaths on our roadways, in impaired driving, and the risk that you and I face every day as we drive down the highway? And that although we may not be impaired, we don't know what's coming at us. And that's the risk that several folks and families face as they go on the highways. So as I mentioned, tickets and vehicle checks have increased by almost 50% over the past year. Charges are up significantly as well, which tells us that there is a problem out there in behaviors. But more importantly, is our drug-impaired driving charges are way down. You look at the 40% increase of the number, and it's not that they're stopping less vehicles, because you look at those checks and your checks are up by over 50%. So that means your opportunity to pick up impaired drivers obviously is much higher. You're checking more vehicles. Yet you look at those drops in the number of impaired driving charges. The other piece that's been a bit of a surprise so far, at least, is around cannabis. We haven't seen the level of cannabis impairment, I think, that many of us expected, and the drain on police resources that we thought that would be. It was a heavy drain initially around training and getting equipment and getting set up to be in a position to enforce some of those laws and properly trained to do it. But we're not seeing the level of impairment when people get behind the wheel that many of us anticipated we would, at least not at this stage. Now that edibles are on the market, that could change, I suppose, and we'll have to monitor that as we move forward. So we have looked at a couple ways of modernizing some of our service delivery, and a lot of this is driven around our ability to, the first two at least, the drive-in and the fly-in models. Drive-in in Deschambault Lake, a fly-in model in Wollaston Lake, is around being able to staff these locations. And it is a challenge in this day and age to be able to staff them and have competent people go into those locations to police those communities. So the drive-in model is where they drive in from a hub in Prince Albert, go in for their shifts for, I believe it's 8 days, and then come out for 6. Similar model where they fly into Wollaston from Prince Albert. In regards to our consultation in the southwest corner of the province, and some refer to it as the SWIFT hub consultations that have been happening over the past few months. Those are ongoing. They're still doing interviews next week. The driver behind that isn't to close detachments. I can tell you that right now. You have my assurance on that, and I believe the minister has spoken about that as well. That's right in the document that went to the consultants, that option is not on the table. When I look at it from a commanding officer's perspective, in charge of a province, of policing in the RCMP jurisdiction within the province, the one piece I need to look at is I have X number of members to police that area and all of the responsibilities that come with it. I need to look at the workload across the province and across our detachments. And there is and there has been a very significant discrepancy between the workload in many of our detachments in the north and some of our detachments in certain areas of the south. In that I've got one detachment in the north that has, when I look at their workload and the crime severity, is about half the resources of what they need. And yet I've got some other detachments that have a little extra than what they need. So I've got this imbalance, and it's not just one detachment, it's several detachments in the north. I've got some that could use to meet just the baseline 10 resources. Some of them are short. That has an impact on those people that we ask to work in those communities. In my opinion, it has an impact on public safety in those communities. And I think we owe it to them to have a serious look at that balance. And that's some of the discussion that I've had with the minister about the imbalance and the need for us to look internally to see if we can find efficiencies in some ways in the service that we provide to try to correct some of that balance in the absence of new funding. Because that's really the only other solution for me, is new bodies and new funding to create or to fix that imbalance in some of these communities. And I can tell you with unionization coming to us in the force, those imbalances are going to be brought to my attention far more often than they have been in the past, and I'm going to have to start looking at answers to address some of that. In regards to the actual SWIFT hub study, there's no preset determination of what we're doing. It's an examination of what may be options that they can present to us after doing their community consultations, the consultations with the members that are involved, and at the end of the day, they're going to draft a report that'll come to us. We'll sit down and look at the options that they've presented for consideration, and that's what they are. They're options for consideration. It doesn't lock us into following any of those options. And then I sit down with policing and corrections and the minister, and we talk about a path forward. And obviously we come back to you as community leaders and have that same discussion before any decisions are made. But I thought it was important, A, that you understand and hear from me directly about the fact that we're not looking at detachment closures, and that you look at it from that lens that I talked about a few minutes ago about this significant imbalance in workload and pressures across the province, and how, as the commander of the police service, provincial police service, you have a responsibility to look at that from a business perspective and also from a health perspective and public safety perspective about, in the absence of new funding or new money, you have to find a way to address some of that. And that's the challenge I'm seized with as I go forward on that. And whether it's that area, we look internally in some other areas where we've been able to free up a couple bodies and move people around a bit, or not people, but positions, I guess would be a better way to frame it. So that's kind of my synopsis of that right now, but obviously we will come back to you before any final decisions are made on that front. And again, it's a report from a consultant, and there'll be suggestions, and it won't be the first consultant's report I've received in the past that I haven't followed all the suggestions on. They've got to be practicable, they've got to be workable, both from our perspective, from your perspective, and obviously from the ministry's perspective. So hopefully that answers some of the questions of where we're at in that regard. One other piece, and it's not in the slide, but it's one that I wanted to address because I'm sure there were some questions earlier this week in regards to it, is around protests. Another significant draw on police resources, another approach that generates a lot of questions both internally in the media and obviously in communities about the different approaches from a policing perspective that we see to protests, not only within our province but across the country. I just came back from a meeting with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Board of Directors, where we discussed this as well earlier this week. And that we take an approach of what's called a measured approach to protests. And so a lot of that is based on the law. Some of it is based on our past experience with large protests and how some of them have gone bad and what we've learned from that. And it's a constant piece of evaluation, almost on a daily basis on some of these. You're trying to balance a variety of competing factors. One is obviously public safety at the front and foremost, is what is the public safety risk balanced against people's right to protest and how they're protesting. So public safety is always number one question you ask. What's changed and why now if we're going to take action on it? And sometimes things do change and you're forced into a position where you do need to take action on it. The other piece, if you take action on a large-scale protest, and here I'm talking significant numbers of bodies, it's not just about that day you take action. And that if you take action in some of these, you may now just be setting your foot into a whole pile of crap that you're going to be there for the next 2 to 3 to 4 months, depending on the length of that dispute. And if there's criminal activity and it's significant risk to public safety, then that's part of the job and in you go. But in my mind and in the mind of several police leaders, if there's not a public safety issue, is that a proper use of police resources that you're going to tie up for months on end? And that risk. And you're managing that risk. It's not as easy as they play it out in the media many times. These are pieces you need to consider as you're making some of those decisions. Whether there's a court injunction in place. A court injunction will often direct the police to take action with a police enforcement order. And in those instances, we are seized with taking action. The courts have decided that this has gone on long enough in civil disputes primarily, and they want to see the police take some action to enforce whatever the conditions are of a court order. In those instances, we are obliged, obviously, to take action to enforce that order. What we control in regards to that is the intensity of how we enforce it and the speed with which we enforce it. Those are key points. We need to make sure that we can do it safely, that we have a proper plan in place and proper resourcing to do it. So when we go in, we're effective in how we do it, and we do it safely with the least amount of harm to our officers, to the public, and to those involved. So that's a bit of the difference between some of them. The other piece is around impact to critical infrastructure, and I say this from I guess more from an RCMP perspective, is that's a big piece that we need to consider as well. If there's a risk to critical infrastructure, and that may change, I guess, the speed and intensity of that response. But it's something that you're measuring each day as the situation changes and how you respond to that. And there's no easy answers to them. Each situation is very different, whether it's a labor dispute. We've seen disputes on the rail lines here recently, and I think with the TMX pipeline and some of the other issues that are coming down the pipe here, it's got the potential to be a long, hot summer on that front. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of some of the things we consider as we go through, and no one situation is the same as the other. The other piece that needs to be considered is what impact do our actions have on what else is happening. And if one of us missteps on that front, our protest situation, not only within the province but across the country, can change dramatically. And we need to be cognizant of that as we make those decisions. I think I'm going to skip this part just in the interest of time. One other piece I would talk about is a familiarization program that we've rolled out in all of our detachments. It's mandatory that they participate in it. What that is we've asked our detachments to go out and find a community leader or somebody that has a good pulse in each community around what's unique about their community, around community values, around industry in the community, around things that they think a new arrival from the RCMP should know about their community. I used the analogy last year when I was here about how I think it's important our members in farming communities know the difference between a heifer and a steer, or a tractor and a combine. I grew up on a farm, so I know those, but we have a lot of people that come in that don't. And yet we're asking them to investigate crimes in some of these communities that are very relevant to what that local industry is and some understanding of it. So rather than have them with both hands behind their back with no knowledge in those areas when they come into your community to investigate some of these matters. The more we can do to bring them up to speed on that and get them integrated in community and what matters in that community is a very important piece. So there's been some neat spins to that as we go through. We've had some out helping with harvest for a day and learning about the different pieces of that. We've had some of them go to some of the local plants and learn about that industry and the employees there and what they do. And then others obviously participating in local events or ceremonies that are relevant. So I think probably I'll stop it there if I have time for a few questions. Check to the moderator. I'll take some questions if people have questions. I don't want to take up the whole time block talking up here. Yeah, I see one guy there.
Mic one. Mic one. Can you hear me?
Yep.
You referred to with the Southwest consultations that there'd be interviews being conducted next week. Could you elaborate on that for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So next week, I'm being interviewed, as is the criminal operations officer, which is the officer that's in charge of the investigations and operations in the province. So they wanted to save our interviews to last, obviously, till they'd heard from the other consultation pieces that they've done. I don't know what they have in addition to that for interviews, but I know that one's next week, so that gives me some level of comfort, obviously, that their report's not written yet, and that they still have to talk to us, and I'll get a better sense after that what remains in their work list and a time frame of when we may expect that report. Number three.
Tom McKnight, RM of Paddockwood. I guess it depends on what source you look at, but it says that the RCMP has roughly a 6.6% vacancy. There's some news sources saying that what the RCMP plans on doing is deleting vacant positions so that their percentage can go lower. It's not solving the problem. All it's saying is now we have a 5% vacancy because we got rid of 20 jobs.
Okay, good question. I can speak to our vacancy rate here in Saskatchewan. It's not 6.6. When I arrived here, we were around between 9 and 10%. As of now, we're down around the 2% mark as far as actual hard vacant positions. We took in a significant influx of recruits here in the past year, over 90. That created some budget pressures because we were able to get more than what we thought we would get. We asked for 90 and they followed through and we got them, so created some pressures on some of our other operational areas, some of our purchases of equipment, et cetera. But what I heard consistently across the province, whether I was speaking to our employees, speaking to community leaders, or just people I met in different functions, was around the impact those vacancies were having. And we felt at the time that if we had that opportunity to get those extra bodies and fill some of the vacancies, that was the road we were going to go down and make some other corporate decisions on finding ways to cut funding or delay some purchases, so that we were able to do that and address some of that. What I'm hearing as I travel around now is people are seeing a difference on that front. I hear it regularly from our members as I travel in. I'm not getting hit up on that issue as much as some others that come up in some of the discussions. We do have one of the lower vacancy rates, I would say, across the country when we look at that. But that's a hard vacancy rate, as I mentioned. Now we have other vacancies around pat leaves that every industry has. Those aren't counted in that number. I haven't had any discussion at this point in time with, and obviously it'd be a discussion with the province if we're going to eliminate positions that are vacant. But there's been no discussion at all in this province about eliminating positions that are vacant so that we can change that vacancy rate and make it appear that it's lower. Number two.
Edward Keck, RM 105. My local ratepayers are farmers. They need to get their product to market to pay their bills and put in a new crop. These blockades are stopping a lot of product from getting to market. And there's a lot of us that are impacted negatively. And I believe the RCMP should be doing their responsibility to get these blockades cleaned up. And I don't see that we should worry about the impact on a few people when there's such a major impact on producers right across the province that is being just not respected. I mean, we carry this province. We need you to do your job and get these blockades cleaned up right now.
I'm well aware of the impact it has on several industries, particularly farmers in this province. I hear it regularly, and as I mentioned earlier, I grew up on a farm, so I'm alive to the impacts that has on the industry. Having said that, I don't control what happens in other provinces. We do have these discussions regularly on a national level in regards to what was happening in BC, because that was in RCMP jurisdiction, and the impacts that can have elsewhere. So I hear you, and we weigh in with those impacts when we talk about the impacts it has, because each province has a different perspective on what those impacts are. And in our province, we were hit very hard on that front, and it's not lost on me. Last one, number 2.
Curtis Lammers, RM346. Your opinion here a couple of years ago, and maybe wasn't yours, your predecessor, about rural crime and rural theft. And you said just let insurance pay for it. You literally just flipped a green light on for the people that are doing it. And as far as letting insurance foot the bill, after it happens a few times, we can't get insurance. Besides, our insurance rates going up. So that's not working. And if you need help out in the country, I know you've got a lot of new guys that are in an area that don't know where they're at or how to get through it. It would be really simple for you to just ask, say, the local fire department or anybody, and most of the fire departments in this province of Saskatchewan are rural boys or men or whatever you want to call them. They can help you immensely. We had an incident this last week that could have been solved in 5 minutes if you'd just asked. And it took days to do it, and it actually affected my family, and I'm not very happy about it. So if you guys could just step out, if you need help out in the country, come and ask. We're not going to say no.
Okay, thanks for that. I think I mentioned earlier that our theft rates are down. I'm not aware of who made the comment about insurance taking care of that, but that's not the solution. I totally agree with you on that. We recognize that. That's some of the things that are happening here to try and address property crime in the province. And property crime, when I speak of that, I speak of rural crime. We understand that's a high priority. It's why it's on our priorities. It's why we're seeing the resources being dedicated to bring those numbers down, which we're starting to see, as I mentioned earlier in I think it was my first slide. It's not perfect. It's not where we want it to be yet, but it's going in the right direction. To the second point, I think that goes right back to my piece on familiarization and trying to get our members ingrained in community as much as possible so they have those relationships, so that they do reach out. Because you're right, the local area knowledge, not only of geography, but of issues, of players, of who's who in the community, is extremely important in helping us do our job. So thank you for your leadership, for your support of our members in the field. I appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity to present today.
You want to take a few at the back if they have one? There's one guy standing still.
I'll just go down to him.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. Next, we have a special panel planned. I'm excited to introduce the following students with 4-H Saskatchewan: Cameron Choquette, Lacey Bauer, Emily Latendre, and Hardin Smith. The 4-H Youth Panel will be moderated by SARM Director Bill Huber. Are they here? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Norm, for those introductions of these young 4-Hers. I volunteered to be the moderator for this job this morning because 4-H has and always will be a big part of my life. I was a 4-H member. My dad was a 4-H leader. My 4 children were all involved in 4-H. And I think they learned an awful lot from the 4-H program, and it was the beef club that they were involved in, and it gave them a lot of skills and personal attributes, which makes them leaders, young leaders, growing up to be the young men and women that run our operations in this province. So, without any further ado, we'll get the panel underway, and I'm going to ask some of you some questions, and I'm going to listen to your responses. So the first question is going to be directed to Lacey. So Lacey, through your involvement with 4-H, you have had the opportunity to meet youth across Saskatchewan and even across Canada, while also learning about various levels of government. What kind of issues are today's youth passionate about, and what can municipalities do to address these issues? Lacey? Just turn on your mic. Yeah, turn on. That's it.
Okay. So 2 of the issues that today's youth are passionate about are mental health and agriculture awareness. 1 in 5 people in Canada will personally experience a mental health problem or illness, according to CMHA National. Mental illnesses affect people of all education levels, ages, social statuses, and cultures. And what I found in 4-H is that the youth feel that there are not enough resources available to the rural populations. The RMs could help address this problem by providing professional assistance through workshops that focus on how to maintain positive mental health while living in a rural setting, especially considering the hardships that come with living in a rural area. People who do not grow up on a ranch or farm are often not exposed to our agriculture practices. This presents the issue of many misconceptions about where food comes from and how animals are treated. I think that the RMs could work with the education systems to help introduce agriculture-based education into the classrooms. An example of the need for this education is when I attended a basketball camp at Notre Dame. We were on the bus, and a girl from Regina points out the window, and she's like, "Is that a habanine?" And I look at her, I'm like, "You mean a combine?" And she's like, "Yeah, those things, and they make the round things in the fields beside the roads." And we spent the rest of the bus ride talking about ranch life and the misconceptions that she had about it. And this was the first time I really realized how little people know about agriculture, and since then I knew that I had to be an advocate for ag because I grew up on a ranch and I had that experience.
Give her a round of applause for those answers. Thank you very much, Lacey. Next, I'll direct a question to Emily. Your 4-H club and Spruce Home is very involved in the community, and you have also personally taken on initiatives to support community involvement. How can we encourage youth to become more active in their communities, and what opportunities would you like to see for youth from municipalities?
So in my experience, I find that it's really important when your community is a community. So that means supporting each other, sharing events. In my 4-H club, we always try and involve the community. So we try and get as much outreach as we can to advertise, invite people. We started hosting bingos because we felt that there was a larger age demographic of older people who like to go to bingos. So to get our youth involved with our older population, we decided to start doing bingos. And I think that's a great idea, and I wish that we could see more of that. And I think because those of you who are here today are leaders in your community, I think it's important that we see that relationship start to build and see that outreach from the leaders in our community back into the youth to get them involved. And I think to get them involved, one thing that would be really impressive would be a youth position on your board. So with 4-H Saskatchewan, I'm actually a board of director. I am a full board of director with voting privileges. This is incredibly important to our organization. We get a youth opinion. This keeps youth involved. I'm 20 and I'm in my 3rd year of university. I come back to my 4-H club like 3 times a month. I think I drive home just for 4-H events. I go and bug everyone at the 4-H office probably once a week. But having that sense of me on the board gives me that sense of community. And I feel like if the board potentially had a youth position or a youth advisory council to the board, that would give that opportunity for real community engagement and youth involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I hope everyone's listening to those comments, because we all have to step up and help with this. Hayden, as a young person living and farming in rural Saskatchewan, what does the future of rural Saskatchewan look like to you?
So I would say that rural Saskatchewan is in the process of consolidation. You know, people are consolidating to bigger centers and cities. Farms are getting consolidated into bigger farms. Dealerships are getting consolidated into bigger identities. With all this consolidation that's happening, there's not a shortage of opportunity in rural Saskatchewan still. You know, maybe the opportunities are different than they used to be 10 or 20 years ago, but there's still a very wide variety of opportunities in rural Saskatchewan. We just need to have our eyes open for how that may change.
Thank you, Hayden. Hayden, you didn't even have any notes on that presentation or that answer, so commend you on that, right? You just did excellent. Cameron, you have taken on various leadership roles as a young person. From your experience, can you share what kinds of obstacles you and others may face for youth getting involved in leadership roles, and how can municipalities help to reduce these obstacles?
I think there's immense opportunity for youth to get involved in leadership positions in rural and urban municipalities in Saskatchewan, simply because there's fewer of us out in rural Saskatchewan. So frankly, competition is less stiff in terms of job opportunities, in terms of awards or mentorship. When seeking leadership positions, I grew up in the RM of Kelvington. My first job off my family farm was actually at the RM of Ponus Lake. So I think access is a really big piece. There has to be access available for young people to get opportunities, and municipalities have to be aware of how they're engaging young people, because what is perceived of what has always been done or what is what people believe. And so if the perception of rural municipalities in Saskatchewan is one of an old boys club, is one of male dominance, if the perception is one of the way it's always been done, young people will be very tentative in getting involved with municipalities, rural and urban. So I think being cognizant of what the perception of rural municipalities are in your communities is really integral in terms of eliminating those obstacles, because a certain amount of young people will self-select out simply based upon what they perceive to be the culture of a rural municipality.
Thank you very much, Cameron. Emily, you are currently attending the U of S to obtain your degree in agribusiness. And like you, many youth leave rural communities to pursue education and career opportunities. How can we bring these young people back to rural Saskatchewan to enhance our communities with their new skills and knowledge?
So I just want to build on something I said before. I come back at least 3 times a month for 4-H because that is my sense of community. So I think to bring youth back to engage in the community, it's really important to create a community. And to connect with my earlier point before, who better to create a community for youth than the youth? So that's where I really think it is important to get a youth voice. And because I am involved with my 4-H, I get involved with my community. So I go back home to go attend pancake breakfast so I can see my neighbors. And I think getting back to that root of community, and similar to what Cameron said, disassociating those old boys clubs versus what the boards are actually like now, because we do see women involved, we do see younger people involved. It's not what we think it is. So I think really opening those doors and just re-teaching what community looks like in rural municipalities will really be the key to getting youth active, as well as having the opportunities to engage them.
Thank you, Emily. That was excellent. Great answer. Cameron, what is your understanding of municipal government? How it works and opportunities you see in the field?
Well, for those who know me, I'm a bit of a nerd, so my knowledge of municipal government is quite thorough because I like to be an informed young taxpayer. And I just landed my first job at a university, so now I'm actually paying tax, and I want to know what's going on. It's great to get your first job, not so great to pay tax. And like I said before, Bill, my first job out of the family farm was with a rural municipality. So my knowledge of municipal government is that it's the closest level of government to the people, and the people are the least engaged in terms of voter turnout. And it's a hard fact to swallow, but that's kind of the reality of municipal government and civic elections in this province. I think there's immense opportunity, and I'll comment on two specific. One being the opportunity for elected officials, and one being the opportunity for public administrators, or CAOs, senior public servants in rural and urban municipalities. So first of all, I think there's an immense opportunity for young people to engage in political life, in public life, as a politician. And I think on the flip side, there's an immense opportunity for qualified, competent public service professionals to serve elected officials in staff capacities. And I think I'm getting an MPA at Johnson Shayama right now, and we're learning about the complex nature of government. And I think everyone in this room I would hazard to say that governing a municipality is extremely difficult as problems grow more complex, as funding grows tighter. I think qualified, management-trained professionals with backgrounds in public administration are needed in rural Saskatchewan to lead rural municipalities moving forward. But I think there's a dichotomy in both of my points, and that is we want young people to be involved, but when we seek public officials as people who vote, and as we hire public servants, we look for experience. And I guess my challenge would be those are not incongruent. You can have young people with experience, but they're not going to be 45. They're not going to have 10 years experience, but they're going to bring a different perspective and a different lens to it. So you can have age, you can have young people involved, and you can have experience, but don't expect 25 years experience coming from a 30-year-old. It's not going to happen. So I think we just have to acknowledge that. But there's immense opportunity for qualified public servants and young people sitting on RM councils and leading RM councils, both young men and young women.
Thank you for them comments. I'd just like to add one thing when you mentioned about your first job and paying tax. I don't like paying tax any more than you, but when you pay income tax, at least you know you're making some money. So, Hayden, as you know, SARM is an association that represents and advocates on behalf of rural municipal government. And SARM has been in operation for over 100 years. What do you think SARM needs to know about young people in this century that could help advance the work that we do?
So I would say that young people don't want to be underestimated. We want to be able to be equal partakers in society with the older generations. With that, we want to be able to give back to our communities at the same rate that they do, and we want to be able to have success in our communities. But the other side of that is that we want to make sure to have good quality of life. When we're out in communities, you know, it's important to us to have good access to healthcare. We want to be able to have good roads. We want to have good school systems. We want to be able to have good cell phone service and internet, stuff like that, to match what would be in the cities, or at least be comparable to that, to make sure that we have good quality of life and are able to be successful out in the country.
Thank you for that answer, Hayden. Okay, the last question, we're going to direct this one to Lacey. Lacey, what do you think is an advantage to growing up in rural Saskatchewan on the farm?
So when I read this question, I had two initial thoughts. One, you learn the look that cattle give you really quick. And number two, when you're running after that cow in the snow and the mud, wearing muck boots, 2 pairs of pants, 3 hoodies, coveralls, and a coat, it's really good cardio. Growing up in a rural setting has so many advantages, from learning responsibility at a really young age, to knowing how animals are raised and how crops are grown, to learning the importance of hard work and perseverance. You learn patience, you learn how to be selfless and help others, and you know everybody in your community, and everyone in your community relies on each other. And you learn that when things get hard, you just have to work even harder to get through them. It teaches you to appreciate the time and work it took to get every single meal onto your plate, and you know the importance of respecting the land and animals that food came from. There really are endless advantages to growing up in a rural setting and on a ranch, and I personally am so grateful to have had that opportunity to grow up in a rural community.
Well, thank you very much, Lacey, for that answer, and I'd like to, again, that concludes our questions on this panel, but I'd like to thank each and every one of you on behalf of SARM and our board of directors and staff for the excellent answers that you provided us. Ladies and gentlemen, these are our young leaders and entrepreneurs in this province, so I think we got a bright future. Thank you. We have a minute or two if there's somebody that has a question or two that you would like to direct to one of the 4-H members up here. So I will entertain an opportunity for questions just for a few minutes. If you can see the microphones up, just let me know. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you all for having us. This is showing us, the youth, that you guys are wanting to be engaged with us as we're wanting to be engaged with you. And I think taking that initiative and inviting us here today is a really big step. I think if you guys end up having questions after, feel free to contact 4-H Saskatchewan if you can't get a hold of us, or come find us after to exchange business cards. But I think what you guys are doing here today to even get our voice shows really big growth, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
So seeing no questions, I'll let you be excused from the stage. And thank you again for being part of our program.
Thank you, 4-H Saskatchewan, and for Bill for shedding the light on different perspectives. Really appreciate that this morning. So next on our agenda, we have Dr. Nels Konecki, the Director of the Canadian Centre for Health and Safety in Agriculture. Dr. Konecki has been with the Centre for nearly 20 years, and he completed his medical school training in 1985 and occupational medicine specialty training in 2000 at the University of Alberta. He is an associate professor in the Department of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan. Please help me welcome Dr. Nels Konecki.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. developing the COVID elbow bumper. Yeah, the COVID elbow. Thank you for the opportunity to spend some time in front of all of you again today. And welcome on behalf of the Canadian Centre for Health and Safety in Agriculture. I'm going to grab the remote from the other. It's our pleasure to deliver some scholarships and some awards today. But I'd like to start with just a little bit of a reminder of who we are and our role here in the province. We're a research and outreach center housed at the University of Saskatchewan, and as many of you probably know, founded by Dr. James Dosman back in 1986, who had a passion for respiratory health and rural health and agricultural health right from the get-go. And we've certainly grown and expanded over the time. We now have 12 faculty, a number of staff, and many students, and occupy the first floor of the I still call it new, I guess it's not that new anymore, the Health Sciences E-Wing on the University of Saskatchewan campus. We have funding from a number of sources for the research that goes on at the center. We're a research and outreach unit, but research has always been a core activity. And we pride ourselves both on the research and the outreach side of really being present in the community and in Saskatchewan and asking questions that are important to rural Saskatchewan residents and Saskatchewan farmers. Of course, it started as agricultural and continues as agricultural health and safety research and outreach, but also rural health research and outreach. And we have multiple labs with equipment that's funded federally, provincially, and with industry partners that lets us ask questions and come up with ways to reduce risks in agricultural and solve rural health questions. And of course, especially now with the COVID-19 situation, things like this are front and center on our minds and on our thoughts, and we adapt and try to help the university environment come up with solutions on how to best protect the populations that we're serving. We are, as I think many of you know, and what brings us here every year, also home to the Agricultural Health and Safety Network. The mission of the network is to improve health and safety on the farm through outreach activities, through education, service, and evaluation research. And it was formed, and this we'll speak to this a little bit more towards the end of my presentation, about 2 years after the center was founded, also through the efforts of a number of people, and we'll sort of go into that a little bit more, in 1988. The network really is thanks to you, to the member rural municipalities that formed the network. It grew from 5 or 6 RMs that started in 1988, and we're up to, the numbers vary a little bit year to year, 214, 215 now, and we'd like that growth to continue. But it really speaks to our passion and our desire to try to reach rural Saskatchewan and the farmers and the rural residents and deliver the health and safety programs and answer the questions that they have and try to change our delivery programs as needs arise. So we really spend time, we have an office, we have desks, and we have a location, but no one's almost, it's rare that someone's there. We're on the road all the time, out in the community, delivering workshops, seminars, and those of you that were at our annual general meeting yesterday heard a lot about what has been going on thanks to the efforts of our staff. We have a small number of staff, but it's incredible, and it makes me always very proud to see how much they can produce and how much we can do with the resources that we have. We're in schools, we're in communities, we deliver health and safety clinics, and as I say, workshops. I was excited to hear the mention about mental health, because that is very much a front and center issue in agriculture for the last few years, and we're also working with partners to deliver resources. We do have resources, and to come up with other resources and deliver seminars rurally on this important issue as well. And I just want to remind, or perhaps announce, that next week is Canadian Agricultural Safety Week, which is a regular annual event initiated through the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association, and they work together with provincial partners like us to deliver it locally, and we're stay tuned for some activities there and some exciting new information, I think, from the government as well with respect to that, but just in general promoting health and safety in this important industry, and which really speaks to all of us and the roots that we have. We will be having some time on radio, talking about the activities that we do, and very active on social media next week as well during that. And so I'd like to spend the rest of the time just making the presentations that are really the core of one of the outreach activities that we do every year. And the first one is a scholarship presentation that we deliver and that we've been home to for many years. It's the 90th anniversary student scholarship in agricultural health and safety that was developed and started with the assistance of SARM. And the background is that back in 1995, SARM auctioned off the first copy of its history book called Building a Province, commemorating the 90th anniversary of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities. And that auction at the time netted a sum of $2,600, which the SARM Board of Directors contributed to CCHSA, to the Canadian Centre for Health and Safety in Agriculture. And those funds initiated the SARM 90th anniversary $1,000 student scholarship in agricultural safety and health. The Founding Chairs program at our center now is the home of that scholarship, and we maintain the scholarship. And so I'm excited to announce the two recipients of that scholarship first. And I'll also just maybe ask Bonnie Mills Migley if she's around. I don't know where, I can't see. These lights are very bright. Oh, you're here. To join me on stage as well. She's the acting chair of our steering committee. Come on up, Bonnie. Sorry, did I catch you off guard there? Are you also responsible for the pictures? No. Okay. Okay, I'll hand these to you. So I'm just very delighted to announce that the recipients for the scholarship winners are Kenneth Murray from RM number 1, Argyle, and Marcy LeBlanc from RM number 5, Estevan. So come on up, Kenneth and Marcy. Congratulations. Their task, in order to win the scholarship, is to write an essay on why agricultural health and safety is important on their farms. And so they were selected as the winners for that this year, and congratulations to both of them. Thank you. All right, congratulations. Thank you. Thanks again. The other award we'd like to present for the first time this year was, you might remember, or maybe not, it was announced last year by our acting director, Dr. Shelley Kurchuk, who took over while I was on sabbatical. And it's called the Ike Thiessen Building a Foundation Award. And before I go on, I'll talk a little bit more about the award in a minute. I'd also like to invite Ike's son, Dennis Thiessen, and his wife, Jackie, to come up on stage. You can keep your camera with you if you like, Jackie. Take pictures of the crowd. That doesn't usually happen. So welcome. So this award recognizes, it's called Building a Foundation, and it really recognizes foundational support and dedication to the center, but really to the network. The late Isaac, or Ike Thiessen, was a farmer in the Aberdeen Rural Municipality 373, and he was also a councillor and a reeve there for some time, but as well the president of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities from 86 to 88. And at the start, you remember I mentioned Jim Dossman at the beginning. He was also instrumental in starting the network. He and Ike toured the province, and Ike especially was crucial and instrumental in rounding up and really heavily recruiting the first 5, but probably around the first 20, I think, RMs that ended up being members of the network. So he truly was foundational in the development and the growth in the early years of the network. 30 years later, we have over 70% of Saskatchewan rural municipalities that are members. supporting the network's mission to improve health and safety on the farm through education, service, and evaluation research. And so before I show the next slide, showing who the recipient is, I'm also just going to turn it over to Dennis a little bit to say a few words.
Thank you, Neil. I would just like to say on behalf of Dad, I just thank you for the honor of honoring him with this award. I know he spent many years. I see a few faces that I recognize from his time here, but I know he spent many, many hours in community service. As Neil has said, he was the RM Reeve, he was on council, he was, of course, the SARM director, and the SARM served a term as the SARM president. And I know firsthand the many, many hours he spent in public service. And I think it's truly an honor to all you people here that have also so much public service in your own communities. I think it's truly a great, he was truly a great mentor and example. And just on a lighter note, I would like to congratulate SARM on your choice of clothing. The one thing when Dad was here, originally you had those bright orange jackets, and I know he just hated those orange jackets. But I see you've changed, you got the new style. That really looks good. So thank you for the honor. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dennis asked me, are they still wearing those orange jackets? I said, well, kind of. I think they're a little browner now. So I'm very delighted, very proud, and very honored to say, and I think it's very appropriate that our first recipient for the Ike Thiessen Building and Foundation Award goes to SARM, goes to the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities. Thank you to SARM for the support that has always been there. It means a lot. We're incredibly grateful for that. And thank you, Ray, for being available to accept this award. And here's what it looks like. I'd like to hand that over to you. That's awesome. Oh, and I need to add a thanks also to Corman Park. Yes, Judy. And the brick, the brick that is used as part of this award comes from, has been donated by Corman Park and comes from a building with some history there. And I'm very remiss to not be prepared with the history. So we'll have to explain that perhaps next time. But we're grateful to Judy and to Corman Park for donating that brick as part of this. So congratulations, SARM, and thank you, Ray. For
that's awesome. Thank you very much. You want to take a picture?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Thanks. I just have one more slide where I say thank you again to all of you, to our membership, certainly to SARM and to the Government of Saskatchewan, the Ministry of Agriculture. They provide support regularly for our health and safety network activities. And I would just like to add an acknowledgement yesterday during the annual general meeting. We acknowledged the members that are 30-year members, the RMs that are 30-year members of our network. There's 13 of them, which is just incredible. And to think that they've been members of the network for that long, that predates I won't tell you what I was doing 30 years ago, but I was thinking about university. So that's just really amazing. And I'd like to thank those RMs, especially right now. That's Brock, Mooseman, Redburn, Gull Lake, Indian Head, Victory, Newcomb, Mount Hope, Pleasant Valley, Kinnersley, Sassman, Blucher, woohoo, that's my RM, and Aberdeen. So those are our 30-year members that we recognized yesterday at our AGM. Congratulations. And thank you to all our members. Sorry. That was my last slide. I just want to thank you all again for the opportunity. If you're not a member yet, talk to one of the RMs that are, and be sure to sign up this year. So thanks again. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Konecki. We really appreciate that. And just to mention that, of course, I knew Ike Thiessen when he was the president. I wasn't on the SARM board at the time, but I do remember that he was a great speaker, and I saw them more than once. He would get up and just speak, off the cuff, and I really respected him for that. So I'm glad that you came here today to give us this award. So it's now my pleasure to ask Mike Wurgis from the RMA to talk about the curling awards. If Mike is here. Mike, where is Mike? He's on the way. He's coming up here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Wurgis from the ARM of Moose Jaw number 161. I'm the Division II Director for the Rural Municipal Administrators Association, or better known as the RMAA, and Chairperson of the Curling Committee. I also want to recognize my colleague and co-committee member Barry Vidston, Division IV Director with the ARM of Keys number 303. In the spirit of fun and some friendly competition and a few bragging rights, every year a number of rural municipalities hosts a total of 6 division curling playdowns in different communities throughout our province. I want to take this time to thank the following administrators and their councils for hosting some spectacular division playdown curling events in 2020. So thank yous go to the RMs of Coalfields number 4, Bengoff number 40, Maple Creek number 111, Touchwood number 248, Rosedale number 283, and Round Valley number 410. A total of 51 teams participated in these fun and friendly competitions. This past Monday, the 6 winners of these division finals participated for a chance to win the ultimate prize that even the likes of a number of national and, yes, world championship curlers would envy, that being our coveted RMAA Provincial Champions Trophy, in addition to a limited edition RMAA Liquid Enhancement Container, beer mugs. So the following division champions competed for the provincial playdowns, our provincial championships rather, this past Monday at the Caledonian Curling Club in a north versus south format. So those championship teams, those 6 finalists, were the RMs of Wolseley number 155, Wood River number 74, Piapot number 110, Hazeldale number 335, Rosedale number 283, and Buffalo number 409. After a fun, friendly, and somewhat fierce playdown, 2 teams moved into the final, with one team representing the south and the opposing team representing the north. It was a hard-fought battle in the trenches with some spectacular shot making. In the event, however, one team came out victorious. Now, is this great? So, I first want to congratulate the second place team and invite them to come to the front for a photo op and some valuable prizes. In the event that the players from this team are no longer here, ask any remaining council members or administrator come by to accept the prizes on their behalf. So congratulations on a second place team, or second place finish for the RM of Wood River number 74, representing Division 2 in the south. It was a very close game. It came down to 1 rock, but nonetheless, it was, I think the final score was 8-7, if I'm not mistaken. It came down to the full 8 ends, so well done. Now, what you've all been waiting for. The 2020 RMAA Provincial Curling Championships. Congratulations to the RM of Hazeldale, number 335. Please come forward for your photo op, and also, in the event that players from this team are no longer here, ask that any remaining council members or administrator come forward to accept the prizes on the team's behalf.
Great.
So thank you again to all the participants and hosting municipalities. Despite the challenges and concerns the RMs face on a regular basis, this annual event brings us all together to set aside these worries, to enjoy some great company, friendly competition, and an opportunity to network with our neighbors over some rocks and even on some rocks. I encourage all RMs to put in a team for 2021 or even consider hosting a division playdown. Congratulations again to our champions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and your assistant as well. Very capable. As you know, SARM works with the federal lobbyists in Ottawa, and I'm pleased today that Justin Burrows from Hill Knowlton is here. He is the Senior Account Director and will give us an overview of the political landscape and key government policies, as well as an update on SARM policy issues and our upcoming lobby day. Please help me welcome Justin Burrows.
Doing great. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Ray. Ray and Jay have enjoyed introducing me as Justin Trudeau from Ottawa to the delegates, which they've found quite entertaining. So I appreciate the introduction. So I'm really thrilled to be here to come out from Ottawa to talk a little bit about our role with SARM today, talk a little bit about the work that we've done over the course of the last year, and then provide an update on some of the key policy issues that are happening in Ottawa that I think a lot of you are really well aware of based on the sessions I've been sitting in on. And then we'll just walk you through very quickly some of the work that we're doing over the course of the next year to address these policy issues. I'm absolutely more than happy to take any questions and chat with you after the talk, and I'll be in the lobby afterwards if you'd like to connect on any particular issues that are important to you or any issues that haven't been covered in the overview today. So as Ray mentioned, we're your government relations team in Ottawa, and what that means is we really are your kind of eyes and ears in the federal government. We monitor parliamentary and legislative developments, policy issues. We look for opportunities to put SARM in a position to lobby for issues that are important to them. We proactively seek opportunities to engage elected and unelected officials to make sure that the issues that are important to you are put forward to them and they're considering them in the course of their policy discussions. We develop policy briefs so that SARM, the board, and the members understand how key issues like the budget are going to impact you. And then we also do a little bit of drafting and editing communications, like a committee submission or press releases as they relate to federal government issues. So with that, we work extraordinarily close with the staff, with the board, with the executive at SARM. We provide real-time political and policy updates. Just a few minutes ago, we received word that Sophie Trudeau was in self-isolation as a result of the coronavirus. And so we pass along things like that to the board so that they stay up to date on the latest issues that are happening in Ottawa. We develop event and policy briefs on, say, the introduction of cabinet, on mandate letters, which we'll go through today a little bit more. We prepare members for committee participation, and we're constantly keeping everybody informed on weekly policy calls and monthly board calls. So here's some examples of what that looks like in the real world. Over the course of 2019, and this is just a sample of some of the work that we've done, we finalized 25 lobby day meetings. So this is just over the course of 2 or 3 days. We schedule meetings with key government stakeholders, so ministers, parliamentary secretaries, opposition critics. We schedule a range of different meetings over the course of 2 or 3 days for SARM's board and executive to put forward issues that are important to you. We scheduled four House of Commons committee appearances and 2 Senate committee appearances. And this is really, at the committee level, it's your chance to talk about the very granular policy issues and the terms and conditions of policy as they materialize in legislation. And so those are very, very important. And we're working right now with the government to ensure that SARM's view, say, on the agri-stability program, which is being looked at committee right now, is put forward. Already, throughout the course of this year, we've scheduled a number of different meetings with the Minister of Environment's office on the carbon tax issue, and in particular looking for carbon tax exemptions on issues that are important to you. We've scheduled meetings with the Minister of Agriculture's office, and we've also scheduled meetings with the Associate Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Finance, who is the key individual responsible for the development of the budget, the federal budget, as it relates to many of SARM's issues. So that's kind of what we do in real terms for SARM. So I'll just turn to the kind of broad political landscape in which we're working right now. Obviously, there was a massive shift from 2015 to 2019. And if you take a look at the 2019 electoral map, we get the impression that those of you in Saskatchewan weren't entirely happy with the progress and the direction that the government in Ottawa was taking. And this has kind of developed this ongoing narrative that Western Canada needs greater representation in Ottawa, and that Ottawa is not listening and taking action on issues that are important to Western Canada. With that, obviously we're in a minority government situation. In real terms, that means that the Liberals are 13 seats away from a majority government. That means on the day-to-day legislative and policy side of things, they require the support of one of the Conservatives, the NDP, or the Bloc to pass legislation. The Conservative leadership race is ongoing right now. They will be selecting a new leader on June 27th in Toronto. There are actually only 2 verified candidates. There are a number of folks who have declared that they are candidates for the Conservative Party, but there are only 2 right now, Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole. And so we'll be watching that closely. There are a lot of Conservatives, obviously, around the Premier's table these days. Premier Ford in Ontario, Kenny in Alberta, and your Premier here, Scott Moe, are constantly kind of challenging the federal government on a range of different issues, and you see that most recently on the carbon tax issue, with Saskatchewan's case moving forward to the Supreme Court. And there's a tremendous amount of international issues that are impacting the government's agenda. Obviously, Canada-China, Canada-US relations are impacting things like the Canada Free Trade Agreement, free trade with China, in particular with regard to canola, pulse crops, and trade in general. So these are the government's priorities as they have outlined in their throne speech. So following the election, with the compilation of the 43rd Parliament, the government comes out with a throne speech where they announce what their priorities are. And as they've outlined them, climate change and green technology, which we expect to play a very, very large role in the budget, which will be tabled on March 30th, so in a couple weeks. Healthcare was outlined as one of their primary objectives, and we see that being increased with the introduction of coronavirus. Just yesterday, the government announced a $1 billion package to increase medical supplies across Canada, and with provincial governments in particular. Strengthening the middle class, you see that with the tax reduction that they introduced immediately when Parliament resumed. Export development and market diversification. They're looking at, or one of their objectives is to diversify the markets for Canadian products, and this is kind of in direct response to the impact that the China-Canada dispute has had. Reconciliation, as you know, which has been a bit of a rocky road, I think, with the blockades that have been happening. And then growing Canada's innovation ecosystem, which you see with things like the supercluster program and the protein supercluster program out here out west. So here are some of the more details around the government priorities as they've outlined in their mandate letters to ministers. So this is when the Prime Minister outlines specifically what he wants his cabinet ministers to do over the course of the year. Agriculture, and this is just a sample, this is not comprehensive. The Agriculture Ministry is asked to develop faster short-term support for the agriculture industry in response to the trade disruptions that have happened with China. And this is kind of taking shape with the discussion around the Agri-Stability Program that's at committee right now. The changes to the PMRA, and you see this taking shape with the recent decision on Strike 9, which we are engaged with the government on right now in terms of putting forth SARM's position on this. Rural and economic development. This has actually been a good area for SARM. They have noted throughout the course of the last year that increasing high-speed broadband coverage across rural Canada is a priority for them, and this was again reinforced in the independent telecommunications review that was tabled around a month ago, that they see this not only as a priority, but as an economic development need across the country. On finance and natural resources, they have committed to the finalization and twinning of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, but we'll see how that progresses, and we'll monitor that accordingly. And on the infrastructure side of things, again, this focus on increasing trade corridors. So while those are the government's priorities, this is what the last kind of couple months have actually looked like. You see a number of different rail blockades, which obviously has hugely impacted the membership here at SARM. You'll recall Ukraine Flight 752 was shot down over Iran, and that took up a number of different news cycles and a couple of different weeks in terms of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, his time and his priorities. Coronavirus, this issue is very much ramping up across the federal government. You saw it with the Prime Minister's announcement yesterday. The Minister of Health made the announcement that she expects 30 to 70% of Canadians to actually contract this. And so they're working on mitigation measures as it relates to medical equipment. And you'll likely see that being addressed in the budget. The Tech Frontier project, which was withdrawn by Tech Resources, but this took up a lot of the government's time, in particular in the legislature. Canada-U.S. relations, obviously Huawei, and the impact of the U.S.'s position on Huawei. They have been pressuring the Canadian government not to include Huawei in our telecommunications infrastructure, and we continually expect that decision to come down, but there's no indication from the government of when that will actually happen. And of course, Canada-China relations is an ongoing issue. The Security Council seat campaign took up a couple weeks of the Prime Minister's time, as you know. This was in the midst of the rail blockades and the development of the coronavirus. So that was not looked at very fondly by a number of different Canadians. Here are the kind of key ongoing policy issues as they relate to SARM. As we mentioned, rural broadband, this was captured in the mandate letters as well as the telecommunications review. So every indication that we have from the government is that it is a priority for them, and that they will move forward with the rollout of rural universal broadband. But it's important that we continue to maintain pressure on the government and relay how important this is to rural and remote regions as it relates to Saskatchewan in particular. Agri-stability funding, again, we think that this is gaining a little bit more momentum. You see, as a result of the trade disputes, they have at least recognized that something needs to be done in addition on this program. This is being looked at right now at the Agriculture and Agri-Food Committee, and we're keeping our eyes on that. And everything in terms of the witnesses that they have brought forward has been positive for SARM. We are working continually on carbon tax exemptions and bringing forward the views of farmers and rural folks from Saskatchewan on this and how it's impacting them. Of course, the Supreme Court decision from the Supreme Court's case that Saskatchewan has brought forward will be decided this year. We're keeping our eye on and working on any impact that the PMRA will have on farmers and the use of products. Single-use plastics ban, they will be coming out with legislation this year on single-use plastics. We are working very, very closely with the government to ensure that SARM's position on things like grain bags are going to be exempt from that ban, but that's going to be a lot of work over the next few months. And Budget 2020 obviously is going to be tabled on March 30th, and we have had not only a submission from SARM, but we have had pre-budget meetings as well with all the relevant stakeholders. The year ahead, again, we view coronavirus and our response as being a large issue. The Supreme Court decision on carbon tax will be coming down, the Conservative leadership race. The U.S. presidential election will be happening later on this year. Market diversification will continue to be a primary goal for both the government and the work that we do, and we can expect a decision on Huawei's participation in telecommunications infrastructure. Legislation, the ban on single-use plastics, and again, I want to reiterate the work that we're doing to ensure that things like grain bags are taken into consideration when that legislation gets moved forward. You'll see the finalization of the Canada-U.S. Mexico Free Trade Agreement, the replacement for NAFTA. That is currently at third reading, and it's being discussed right now at the Senate level as well at committee. Budget 2020, and of course, the Liberals will also put forward gun control legislation. They have announced a ban per their party platform, electoral platform, a ban on assault weapons and to empower municipalities and cities to ban handguns. And so this is an issue that we will be watching as well and updating SARM on as well. In terms of the next major touch points between the SARM board and executive and the federal government, we're looking at developing a lobby day from March 31st to April 2nd. We don't yet know what the impact of the COVID virus will have on this, but you'll see here's a range of the different priorities that we're looking to bring to the government's attention. Everything from transportation infrastructure, agri-stability, carbon tax issue, all the way through to rural broadband and rural crime. And what we're doing is we're taking those key policy issues that are important to you and SARM's membership and matching it with the key stakeholder on the government side who we need to address it with. So already we've confirmed 25 meetings over the course of those days with the Conservative Agriculture Critic, the Minister of Agriculture, the Parliamentary Secretary for Transportation. These are just a handful of some of the meetings that we've already scheduled. And in comparison to last year, we had, over the lobby day, we had 25 meetings, so it's shaping up very well, and there's a lot of positive reception to these issues on the Hill, thanks to the work that's happening at the executive and board level here at SARM. So, from somebody who grew up in Ontario and works in Toronto and Ottawa, I just want to thank the members of the board and the executive and the staff for inviting me here, and thank you all for your hospitality and welcoming me here. And I very much look forward to continuing our work together, and look forward to touching base with each and every one of you over the course of the next couple years. So thank you very much, and again, I'll be in the lobby to have any discussions or field any questions you have. Thanks again. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Justin. So another welcomed SARM tradition is the opportunity to hear from stars. So with us today, I see that Fred Matico is here, and I know there's another young lady that may come up. So Fred, I'll ask you to come up to the stage, please. I'm sorry, I don't have your bio.
That's all right. Don't worry. Don't worry.
I'll take this off. If you can introduce the other people.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, good morning. Jerry Lynn was going to be here this morning. She sends her regrets, had to stay home with her 10-year-old son and be a good mother for him. Today I also have Mark Oden and Sherry Lemon from our Saskatoon base with us as well. So thank you, Ray, for the invitation and opportunity to come. We always look forward to that. STARS was built by the community, for the community, and coming to SARM midterm and annual conventions is always a highlight for our team, as this room is full of people representing the communities who support us and whose people we serve. Those of you who have attended past SARM conventions have heard us say every time, and it bears repeating, it costs $21 million annually to operate our 2 STARS bases in Saskatchewan. The provincial government generously provides half of our funding, and the STARS fundraises the remaining $10.5 million each and every year. SARM has been a big part of this fundraising since day one, and we are incredibly grateful for the opportunity to come and speak with you and to thank you for your generosity. As you likely know, we are currently seeking additional community support to replace our fleet of helicopters across Western Canada. We are more than 2/3 of the way there and still have several millions left to raise for this massive capital campaign, which will enable STARS to serve patients across the province for generations to come. But we can't emphasize enough for our need for sustained funding for our day-to-day life-saving operations. The funding that you and other allies are providing will not diminish. Your support of our mission is an integral part now and in the years to come, as ever will be. We often get asked, where do the donations go? Well, let's take a quick look at the cost of what one of our missions is.
Star 9 Link Center, pre-alert for scene call 30 nautical miles from the city.
Roger, stand by weather check, please.
Link Center copies, standing by for weather.
Link Center, Star 9, the weather is looking good. We accept the mission.
Stars AMC? Yeah, copy that. Standing by for dispatch tones. We're dispatched to an MVC.
Star 9, this is Link Center. You're dispatched for a scene call 30 nautical miles southwest of the city. Patient weight, 80 kilograms.
So as you can see, a helicopter EMS is not an inexpensive operation, but we can all agree that saving a life is priceless. Thanks to donors like you, we are able to place the best life-saving tools in the hands of the most talented crew, all for the benefit of the patients and the communities we serve. Speaking of talented crew, we had hoped to have one of our flight paramedics with us today and a couple of brave SARM volunteers in a simulated intubation exercise. But wouldn't you know it, the crew was just called out a couple hours to Yorkton, and that paramedic has not returned yet, so we're going to have to skip that exercise. So the volunteers can relax. Instead, we'd like to share with you one more example of the impact your support makes in the lives of patients, perhaps your friends, neighbors, loved ones, their families, and the communities across the province. This story takes us to the southwestern part of the province, where one rancher's normal session of horse training turned into an instant of fight for his life.
When you're out here in this environment, it's beautiful. We love living rural, but the downside to that is if an accident does happen, what do? So you do feel vulnerable out here.
It was a Sunday afternoon, a little bit later in the day. It's quiet around here, so I had one of my own horses I hadn't had a chance to work with much that week. Come out here to the round pen, and I grabbed the lead shank and I turned him just that far. And I didn't think a horse could turn and kick in that short a distance, but he could. One foot hit me here and splattered the spleen and broke 2 ribs. And I did not touch the ground until I landed right here. And I pushed myself up and I went like this, left side, spleen, that's not good. And then I just kind of crawled here out my escape hole and told my daughter, I says, I might have to go to the hospital, this hurts. Passed out about 6 feet over here.
I was like, is he dead? When he finally woke up, he said, no, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
I said, Kirk, we're going to the hospital, and he was just being cantankerous, like, oh, let me catch my breath. And Lucas says, no, Mom, it's now.
My son had, checked my vitals here in the yard, and he said, no, Dad, you gotta go now, because he'd done a first aid course. So
by the time we got to the hospital, his heart was down to 42.
So they sent me up for a CT scan. When I got back into the ER, the doctor said, STARS is on their way. And I said to him, that bad, eh? He goes, yeah, that bad.
He said, so yeah, STARS is coming and we hope to get here in time. And I just remember the moment that they came in with a stretcher. And I instantly felt peace.
What they did, taking care of my dad, and that he's still here, is something that makes me really thankful.
The fact that they were there and that people had donated and supported STARS to put them in that position, I was really grateful that it was there for me.
It's really encouraging to know that there is that out there.
I just want to continue to support them and encourage other people to keep supporting STARS, because sooner or later there'll be somebody that needs the help.
Yeah. To conclude, we want to say thank you to SARM and everyone in the room for all your generous support to keep stars in the sky. So thank you. Thank you so much. Your contributions truly are incredible. Since 2012, the total donations from Saskatchewan rural municipalities now totals more than $2.95 million. That's $2.95 million, so thank you. So much appreciated. Well, we really can't show our gratitude enough. The most meaningful thanks comes from our patients, because they're the whole reason why we exist. As you watch this last video, these courageous men, women, and children thank STARS. None of it would be possible without all your generous support. Thank you very much.
I ran over myself with a tractor and baler.
And instead of staying on the pavement, hit the gravel, and we flipped 3 times.
I missed the trajectory. I just kind of landed right on the ground.
So she had a traumatic brain injury with multiple skull fractures.
Next thing we know, there's a tree that fell on both of us.
When I was a baby, I got hurt and they picked me up.
And they flew down and came and picked me up and dropped me off at this children's hospital.
Honestly, without stars, I don't know where I would be today.
It was extremely important. Like, it was a very pivotal part of my recovery and getting me to the hospital.
I don't think I'd be sitting here right now if it wasn't for stars.
I don't know where I'd be or how I'd be if it wasn't for them.
It's just that second chance to save someone's life when they don't have any hope or anything. STARS is there for them.
I have 4 young boys, so for us it means that we get to stay together as a family.
Because of STARS, I actually get to have my miracle baby.
It's an amazing thing these guys do. These are they're the best of the best.
It's just an organization that boggles the mind.
We need STARS. It is an absolute essential service.
They're amazing. They saved my life.
They saved my life.
STARS saved my life.
Thanks for saving my life.
I owe my life to STARS.
I owe my life to them.
What do you say to somebody who saved your life? That's been an ongoing question with me. And there's nothing I can say to say thank you enough.
Thanks for that, Fred. We really, enjoy working with STARS and all the staff there. We like going out to the hangars, I'll be honest with you. We like to go out to the hangar in Regina, the one in Saskatoon, and I hope you invite us soon. We'll be in Regina for the next couple of weeks, in a couple of weeks, I should say. So I hope we can get together then. So in the meantime, we're going to do a draw, 50-50 first of all.
For the draw, those colors.
Okay, so if you have yellow, blue, or green.
And then that's the total.
Okay, so the total amount, wow, that's a lot of money, $1,843.53. Okay? Good. Okay, so am I going to do the honor?
Dig in there.
Okay, all right. So that number it's actually a yellow ticket. It's 941, sorry? Oh, I guess I must be getting colorblind. She said it's green. So it is green. 941-6308. I'll repeat it, 941-6308. Who's got that ticket? Somebody out here. There's somebody there.
So maybe just tell him to come up to confirm the number, and then he can meet me in the office.
Oh. Okay, whoever's got, is there someone that has that ticket? If you're coming, yep, just bring your ticket and we'll confirm it here. It is a green ticket, not a yellow one, right? Did you make your work all so hard to get here?
I'm only here to help.
Yeah, she's here to help. That's great. Okay.
He's going to come back down. So, okay. Draw number 2.
Yeah, thank you so much. The winner's turning the funds back to STARS, so we just appreciate that generosity. Thank you.
Okay. So now this is for no comment on that one. So this one?
Yeah, the pink and orange.
Okay, now this is for pink and orange tickets. Okay, so if you got pink or orange, and the amount for that is $1,813.50. So I'll make that one as well.
Do you want to hold that?
You want to try it? Try it, Fred. I'll let you read the number.
Okay. And drum roll, it is a pink ticket. 8870929. That's 70929. Pink ticket.
Is that somebody coming up there? No.
Does anybody have that ticket? 8870929. There we go.
Oh.
I know that guy. That's
Yeah.
Bill Owens.
Who is it?
Bill Owens from Snake Lake. It's
Oh,
Bill.
good. Oh, I think he kept asking me too if I gave him the look.
Hey, Bill.
You didn't pick the name.
No, sorry, it's actually a green ticket.
Yeah. Should be the middle one there.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to bring this down to the RM office, I can give you your
You get your cash.
cash.
How be if I donated that?
Can you still come down and let me so I can get your just down the stairs? Yeah. So we can announce that she's also donating back.
Again, we just want to say thank you so much for supporting the 50/50s, all your ticket buyers, and again, Bill is turning his winnings back to Stars, so thank you. 100% of your money's coming back to Stars. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Merle.
Pad of paper.
We're all done?
Yeah,
Do you
we're
want
all
me- do you
done.
need help with anything?
So I don't know. No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you once again. Okay. Kels, the gamification winner? The gamification winner, I'm supposed to remember. I did. Okay, one more thing I have to announce is there is a winner of the gamification contest, and the name is MJ Larson, and that's the CEO of the arm of Reciprocity. So they can also go down to the SARM office and to collect the prize for that. So this concludes our agenda. Just remember that you have division meetings, and I think they're going to be putting them up on the screen just to make sure you know where they are. And safe travels, everyone. This convention is adjourned.